80,000 feet of fishing line. No bottom. A beloved family dog lost in a car accident, laid to rest in a pit so deep it swallowed refrigerators and scrap metal and all without making a sound of ever hitting the bottom. And then that same dog shows up days later, wandering the property, very much alive. Armed men on a lonely mountain road, a land deal that appears out of nowhere, and a man who says he woke up hundreds of miles away with days missing from his life and no way to prove what happened. Was there really a bottomless hole hidden in the hills of Washington? Or did late night radio accidentally create one of the most convincing modern legends out of static, fear, and a single caller with a gift for storytelling? If Mel was telling the truth, this wasn't just a deep hole, it was something that shouldn't exist on this planet. Hey y'all, it's Kaylin, and this is Tales from the Thicket, where folklore, history, and the unexplained all get their turn under the lantern. Tonight's story starts with a radio call, a dog that was gone and came back, and a hole that shouldn't exist but might. This is the legend of Mel's Hole. Alright y'all, let's set the scene. It's February 1997. Late night radio is having its golden era. Art Bell is behind the mic on Coast to Coast AM, the show that basically built the paranormal podcast genre before podcasts ever existed. And a man calls in out of nowhere. He says his name is Mel Waters. He says he lives in Kittitas County, Washington, on about 40 acres of rural land near the town of Ellensburg. And he says there's a hole on his property that, by his estimation, has no bottom. According to Mel, this thing was about 9 to 9.5 feet across, lined with stones like an old hand-dug well, and it went straight down into darkness. His neighbors have been using it as a trash dump for as long as anyone can remember. None of it makes a sound, and it never fills up. But hang on. Plenty of people have deep wells or sinkholes on their land. That by itself won't get you on Coast to Coast AM. What gets you there is what Mel claimed he did next. He decided to measure it. Mel told Art Bell he rigged a fishing reel with a 1-pound weight and started lowering the line into the pit. He marked the line as he went. 1,000 feet, 5,000, 10,000, no bottom. According to Mel, by the time he stopped, he had lowered more than 80,000 feet of line. That's over 15 miles straight down. No clink, no slack, just tension and darkness. Art pushed him on the details.
Where did you get that much line? How did you keep track of the depth? Did you ever try anything heavier?
Mel always had an answer. Calm, reasonable, just a guy with a bizarre problem in his backyard. If the story stopped there, Mel's Hole would be a weird late-night curiosity, a deep, maybe dangerously deep shaft on some guy's property. But it doesn't stop there. In later appearances, Mel said things escalated quickly. According to him, government-looking vehicles started appearing on the road near his land. He described roadblocks, men in uniform, and an official story about a supposed plane crash in the area. Mel said he never saw any crash. No smoke, no debris, no ongoing recovery work. What he did see, or claimed to, was a lot of attention focused on his property and that hole. He told Art that officials eventually approached him with an offer that they would lease his land for a very generous sum, and in return, he would leave the country for a while and not ask too many questions. So, Mel said he agreed. What happens next is where the story takes a hard turn into missing time. Mel later claimed he woke up in San Francisco with no memory of how he got there. He said his back hurt, some of his teeth were missing, and roughly 12 days of his life were just gone. No travel receipts, no plane ticket, just a blank in his memory. When he tried to return to his property, he said the land was locked down, no access, and when others went looking, they couldn't find any records tying a Mel Waters to land in the area he described. For believers, that sounds exactly the kind of paper trail you'd expect if something sensitive had been found and quietly taken over. For skeptics, it's a man whose story becomes almost impossible to verify right when it matters the most. Then there's the part that really locked the story into modern paranormal lore. The dog. Mel claimed that one of his neighbors had a beloved dog that was hit by a car and didn't survive. Not knowing what else to do in the moment, and faced with both grief and a very real problem of what to do with the body, the neighbor supposedly chose to lay the dog to rest in what felt like the deepest, most hidden place he knew, the hole. Days later, Mel said he saw that same dog again, alive, wandering near the property. He swore it looked identical, same markings, same behavior, but it acted off. It wouldn't come when called. It avoided getting close, like it recognized people, but wanted nothing to do with them. According to Mel, the neighbor believed with everything in him that his dog had actually come back. That alone is enough to keep a late-night audience hooked. But Mel didn't stop at resurrected animals. In later calls, he claimed the strangeness followed him elsewhere. He talked about another hole, somewhere else entirely, with the same impossible qualities. In one of the most infamous parts of the legend, he said he and others decided to lower a live sheep into the second pit as an experiment. According to Mel, when they brought the sheep back up, it hadn't survived. He claimed there was a strange tumor-like growth on its side. When they cut it open, he said they found something inside that looked less like a normal tumor and more like a small, seal-like creature with flipper-type limbs and large human eyes. Mel insisted this being somehow communicated with him, non-verbally, telepathically, before it eventually returned to the hole. Now by this point, we are a long way from Weird Well in Washington and deep into high strangeness radio. Bottomless pits, resurrected dogs, government cover-ups, and impossible creatures hidden inside animals that hadn't made it back alive. About this same time, a man named Red Elk began speaking publicly about the hole. According to Red Elk, he'd known about the pit since the early 1960s. Indigenous knowledge of the place went back generations, and to his people, it wasn't just a curiosity. It was sacred. It was dangerous. He said there were things connected to that hole that mainstream culture wasn't ready to hear. He didn't give away specifics. What he did insist on was this. To him, it was real, and it wasn't alone. There were others. Each time Mel came back to Coast, the details got stranger, the stakes got higher and harder to confirm. Now, let's take a breath for a minute and put our feet on solid ground. Listeners who tried to look up Mel Waters found nothing. No property records in Kittitas County matching his name. No phone listing, no deed, no tax record. Researchers who went looking for the hole itself found that certain topographical maps of the area seemed inconsistent. Not obviously altered, just off. Like the land had been quietly reshuffled in some official file somewhere. Geologists have also pointed out that a shaft dropping miles and miles into the earth, staying open with no heat, no collapse, and no obvious geological footprint doesn't fit with what we know about how the planet is put together. There's also the context of Coast to Coast AM itself. The show is legendary, but it's not an investigative newsroom. It was built around callers, stories, and atmosphere. Some guests were vetted more than others. Random callers, not so much. And if you listen to the calls back to back, there's a pattern. Each time Mel returns, the story escalates. Deeper hole, stranger beings, bigger government conspiracy. Classic signs of a tale being embellished to keep the audience attention. Those are the reasons many people put Mel's hole firmly in the manufactured legend box. But hang on, that doesn't automatically mean there was nothing at the root of it. Deep, unmappable shafts absolutely exist. Old wells, mine vents, and sinkholes that locals warned kids away from. Rural communities often wrap real hazards in story. Don't go near that old well, it's cursed, is a good way to keep kids away from a hazard. Government agencies do sometimes restrict access to land for reasons they don't fully explain to the public. That part isn't far-fetched at all. And sometimes, the first person to talk about a local legend isn't a polished witness. They're a storyteller. They mix what they've seen, what they've heard, and what they imagine into one big compelling package. So, is it possible there was once a very real, very unsettling hole out near Ellensburg? Dangerous, deep, maybe with some strange animal stories attached to it? And that Mel's calls took that seed and grew it into what we know today? I can't rule that out. So here's where I land on this. The skeptic in me knows that a bottomless hole is geologically impossible. No records, no physical evidence, a 2002 expedition that came up completely empty. Those are not small problems for the believer's case. But here's what keeps me from writing this off entirely. Mel Waters was not the only person talking about this. Red Elk corroborated the existence of the hole, independently from a completely different cultural and spiritual framework. The specific details that Mel described across multiple calls, separated by months, were remarkably consistent. He didn't embellish the way someone spinning a yarn usually does. He kept the same tone, the same uncertainty, the same gaps in his own knowledge. And the government showing up, the land acquisition, the financial settlement, the quiet disappearance of a man from all official records, that part is a thing that keeps paranormal researchers coming back to the story. Because that pattern, we've seen it before. Roswell, Skinwalker Ranch, more cases than I can count. So, if you had to pick, which version feels closest to the truth to you? A very deep, very dangerous shaft that got exaggerated over time? A fully crafted radio legend built to keep people listening? Or something stranger that we just don't have the receipts for? Tell me in the comments. I'm especially curious if you grew up around Ellensburg and heard any family stories about a place you just didn't go. Old wells, bottomless ponds, strange animal behavior. That's the kind of detail that turns a radio myth into a real breadcrumb trail. If you enjoy case files like this, modern legends that sit right on the edge of I want to believe and I can't prove it, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next trip into the thicket and beyond. Until then, keep your lanterns lit and your eyes on the shadows.